4 spine-chilling true stories of sinister trespassing that expose the haunting unknown. Rachel's life in Maplewood spun into a nightmare when she received a call that shattered the calm of her evening routine. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting elongated shadows against her neatly trimmed lawn. Just as she settled Emma and Jake onto the plush living room rug for story time, Mr. Thompson's voice rang through the receiver. It was cheerful, almost too cheerful, filled with an unsettling insistence to check in on her family. "Just wanted to make sure you're all okay, Rachel." A knot formed in her stomach. Was he just being protective, or was something darker lurking beneath his friendly facade? As night enveloped the suburb, the ordinary sounds of chirping crickets and rustling leaves morphed into whispers of dread. Rachel tried to shake the feeling, blaming her exhaustion from endless shifts at the convenience store. But as each day passed, odd occurrences began cracking the surface of her mundane existence. A soft thud outside the window. Just a raccoon, or so she convinced herself. Emma and Jake's whispered claims of a dark figure lurking beyond the backyard sent cold shivers down her spine. She held them tighter, each hug thickening the air with the unshakable feeling of being watched. One evening, as shadows danced ominously along the walls, Rachel prepared for work. Her heart raced as she glanced at the mantelpiece. A family photo hung askew. Something seemed off. The familiar smiles of her children appeared distorted, their eyes blackened, distorted, and grim. She blinked, questioning her senses. Was this real? A pulse quickened in her throat as creaking floorboards echoed through the house, amplifying her fear. Were those footsteps? Or just her imagination running wild? Rachel wrestled with despair when police brushed off her concerns. "Keep the doors locked, Mrs. Johnson," they said casually, their dismissive tone piercing through the fear that wrapped around her like a heavy tarp. But it was more than a lock that troubled her spirit. She needed action, reassurance, and answers. These weren't just threats. They were shadows creeping into her life, invading her sanctuary. Then, as night fell and the house quieted, she noticed the suffocating atmosphere, the feeling of being hunted. The children turned restless in their sleep, the soft murmurs of their nightmares intertwining with her growing terror. Anxiety gripped her heart, urging her to confront Mr. Thompson. But when she stepped out into the cool night air, her breath hitched at the sight of him standing there in her backyard, the moonlight casting an eerie glow on his face. He was whispering to someone, or something, just beyond the reach of the light. Panic washed over her. Fear solidified like ice in her veins as she realized he was too close, too involved. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. What if Mr. Thompson, the neighbor she once trusted, was not just a well-meaning figure, but a predator hiding behind a friendly mask? The realization chilled her deeper than the night air, igniting the primal instinct to protect her children. In that moment, every radiant smile and friendly wave wandered into a dark abyss, leaving her alone on the edge of a terrifying confrontation. The air thickened, and the shadows deepened around her, a palpable tension that foreshadowed a clash between safety and danger. Had the illusion of safety in Maplewood shattered beyond repair? As her heart raced, Rachel was left grasping for a way to fend off the dread closing in around her. Home. Would she find the courage to uncover what Mr. Thompson and possibly more neighbors was hiding before it was too late? The air tangled with tension as Rachel took a shaky step forward. Mr. Thompson's back was turned to her, obscuring his expression, but the low murmur that escaped his lips was shrill with malice. She strained to hear, dread bubbling beneath her skin. What was he saying? Was there something else in the shadows? "Get away from my children." The outburst erupted from her lips before rational fear could dampen it. Mr. Thompson spun around, his face twisting into a mask of surprise, then quickly smoothed back into an eerie smile. "Oh, Rachel, you startled me." His voice dripped with feigned sweetness, ringing hollow in the suffocating darkness. The way he moved, too smooth, too deliberate, triggered every primal instinct within her. Who were you talking to? She demanded, her anguish morphing into defiance. Just the night, dear. Just admiring how lovely your yard looks. He took a step closer, and Rachel felt the heat of his gaze wash over her. She clenched her fists at her sides, aware of the cold metal of the door key still hanging from her neck. Move away from the children, she cried, adrenaline coursing through her. His eyes danced with a strange delight, as if her panic fed him. Oh, Rachel, that's the thing about children, he cooed, a sinister edge creeping into his tone. They are far too innocent to understand. To Rachel, his comment felt like a warning, saturated in foreboding. She turned sharply and glanced through the polished kitchen window, looking toward the sleeping forms of Emma and Jake, their breaths soft and rhythmic. They were blissfully unaware of the darkness that loomed just beyond the glow of their night light. But she was acutely conscious of every second. Rachel stepped back, a calculated retreat, trying to put distance between them. She fumbled for her phone in her pocket, weighing her options. Could she call for help? Should she just run? The thought made her nauseous. But how far could she go without there being a confrontation? I wouldn't do that if I were you, Mr. Thompson interrupted her thoughts, his voice dropping dangerously low. You see, things can get dangerous when people start poking around where they don't belong. Every word dripped with unspoken threats. The shadows lengthened with every second that passed, swallowing Rachel's courage whole, leaving her exposed and panicking. Just then, a sharp noise cracked through the air, something scuttling in the bushes near the backyard fence. Her heart raced. The darkness converged as her mind conjured horrific scenarios. Was it an animal? What if it was him? Did you hear that? Rachel gasped, the tension in her body vibrating through her veins. Mr. Thompson turned his head slowly, his gaze flipping back towards the woods, his smile faltering, recoil evident. The air pulsed with an uneasy silence, as they both seemed to hold their breath, caught in the inexplicable. And then it appeared. A shadow shifted against the tree line, an outline that was not human. The fear constricted Rachel's throat as it melded with the darkness, pulsing in rhythm with her pounding heart. Who's there? She shouted, inching toward the house, but Mr. Thompson blocked her path. It's nothing, Rachel. Just the wind, he retorted, but even he didn't seem convinced, further fueling her panic. With each breath, she fought to remain calm, reminding herself of her children asleep inside. She needed to protect them, needed answers, and she wouldn't let this man, or whatever lingered beyond the tree's lines she couldn't comprehend, take them away from her. Just then, the shadow emerged fully, its shape unmistakable in the fading light, and the air erupted with that same sickening laugh, a laugh that sent Rachel's heart plummeting, as terror coursed through her veins. She took an unsteady breath, wild determination igniting inside her. She would find out what was going on, even if it meant uncovering truths buried in the night that should remain hidden forever. But could she survive the horrors that lurked in her own backyard? Would the shocking revelations pull apart the fabric of Maplewood and her world forever? The shadow stepped closer, merging with the darkness in a way that seemed almost unnatural. Rachel's heart raced, fear gripped her spine like an icy hand. It felt wrong, wrong in every conceivable way. This wasn't a wild animal or a neighborhood kid. This was something else entirely, a presence that made the hair stand on the back of her neck. Mr. Thompson, she started, voice quivering as she took a cautious step back. He didn't respond, eyes fixated on the thing lurking just beyond the trees. The laughter that had echoed moments ago faded into an unsettling silence, the kind that made her bones ache. Is it a dog? She asked, forced to break the stillness. Words tumbled out, raw and desperate. Not quite, Rachel. His smile returned, but it was more of a grimace, barely hiding the excitement quaking beneath. He inched closer, taking an unfathomable delight in her unease. The shape in the shadows lurked and twisted, as if it thrived off Rachel's terror. What do you want? She shouted, unsure if she was addressing Mr. Thompson or the creature behind him. Want? Mr. Thompson's tone dripped with sarcasm, yet something else lingered, a hint of genuine curiosity. I think it's quite clear you're not welcome here anymore. His eyes twinkled in the dark, knowing. The weight of his words settled heavily. She had invaded his territory. Through her mere presence, she had disrupted some twisted game he was playing. What was he really? Then, a guttural growl emerged from the shadows, low and rumbling, followed by a soft rustle in the bushes. Rachel felt a flood of adrenaline surge. "Get away from my children," she shouted again, her voice slicing through the fearful silence. The children were in there, unaware of the monstrous threat just an arm's length away. They were her priority, her only focus. "Don't shout," Mr. Thompson hissed, a flash of anger breaking his facade. "You don't want to attract attention." "Attention? What kind of attention?" Rachel's mind raced as she looked back at the house, contemplating her escape. With calculated movements, she sidled sideways, still keeping her distance from him. The door was only a few feet away, but Mr. Thompson's imposing presence felt like a wall meant to keep her at bay. Another noise, sharper this time, splintered the night around them. It was both haunting and familiar, a child's voice, near but muffled, as if coming from the depths of the earth. "Mama?" Rachel turned, a surge of hope mixing with horror. "Emma? Jake?" She felt the pull of fear anchoring her feet, but she whipped around to face Mr. Thompson. "What did you do to my kids?" His smile widened, revealing teeth that somehow looked too sharp. "I haven't done anything yet, sweet Rachel. But the night is young. And your children? They are simply curious, as children often are." Her hands trembled not from cold, but from the dawning realization of what lay ahead. She couldn't let him take them. "I need to get inside. Now." She lunged past him, heart hammering, desperate to reach the door and usher her children to safety. But Mr. Thompson moved faster, grabbing her wrist with an iron grip. "Oh, no. It's not that easy," he sneered, his voice shifting into something darker, something that chilled her to the bone. Rachel felt her breath hitch, panic setting fire in her gut. She twisted to free herself, but he tightened his hold, drawing her closer into his orbit, away from the door. "Let me go," she screamed, a cry of a mother in danger, echoing into the void around them. But the shadows laughed an insidious, creeping laugh that sent tendrils of insanity racing through her mind. "You've opened a door you can't close, Rachel. And now, the night is hungry." With an instinctual surge, she yanked free, only to see the outline of another figure emerge from the woods behind Mr. Thompson. "Mom." The voice came again, clearer this time, saturated with confusion. Rachel's vision blurred, adrenaline and dread melding into a singular force. As her blood roared in her ears, she turned to face the looming dark, only to see Emma's and Jake's silhouettes standing just beyond the glow of the night light, their innocent faces transforming the dread into a gut-wrenching nightmare. Her children were here, but danger was closer. What would she do next? The horror was just beginning. Rachel's world narrowed, the reality of her children standing mere feet away, overshadowed by the looming threat of Mr. Thompson. She could hear the rustling of branches, the low growl still humming in the air, a reminder that danger enveloped them. "Come here," she cried out, beckoning Emma and Jake with urgency, her voice trembling under the weight of fear. How could they be so unaware? The innocence in their wide eyes felt like a dagger to her heart, but they didn't move. Instead, they looked from Rachel to Mr. Thompson, uncertainty clouding their promising smiles. "What's wrong, Mommy?" Emma's tone was filled with childlike confusion, but it cut through Rachel like ice. Mr. Thompson chuckled softly, the eerie cadence curling into the air. "Oh, let them be, Rachel. They are perfectly safe, for now." "No." Rachel felt as if the ground were giving way beneath her. "Get back. Don't listen to him." Her instincts screamed to reach them, to pull them away from the abyss that she sensed creeping ever closer. Yet the darkness felt like a living entity, seeping through the trees, curling around her children's feet, whispering promises she knew were not meant to be trusted. "Mommy." Jake took a half-step forward, reaching out a small hand, but Rachel felt invisible chains binding his feet to the spot. "Why are you scared?" "I'm not scared," she lied, forcing a tight smile. But the tremor in her voice told another story. "Really?" Mr. Thompson taunted, stepping aside to reveal the full extent of the shadow lurking behind him. It writhed and twisted, the shape almost humanoid, but with grotesque proportions, elongated limbs, and a head too large for its body. It seemed to pulsate with its own dark energy. Rachel shook her head, tears blurring her sight as she willed Emma and Jake to retreat. "You need to listen to me. Come back." Without warning, The shadow lunged forward, propelled by unnatural speed, reaching for the children with clawed appendages. No! Rachel screamed, throwing herself in front of them just as tendrils of darkness began to coil around her children. In that second, reality shattered. She felt the cold grip of the shadows clamp down on her limbs, pulling her further into something dark and unknown. Panic erupted, suffocating. Let go of them. She thrashed against the grip, but it was unyielding. Sweet Rachel, your fight is admirable, Mr. Thompson remarked, stepping forward as if the scene were but an amusement for him. But you cannot shield them from what they crave. What are you talking about? She felt the world tilting, the shadows pressing against her, wanting to consume her whole. Her heart raced with every pulse of fear. Children are curious about things they do not understand, Mr. Thompson replied, a hint of something sinister in his voice. And they have signed a most interesting deal with the night. What deal? Rachel's breath quickened, a knot twisting in her stomach. What have you done? But the truth was slipping away like sand through her fingers. Her mind raced. She couldn't let them be taken. She had to fight back, had to break through the unreal horror sweeping over them. Gathering every ounce of her strength, she focused on the shimmering light from the porch, hoping it was still there, that warmth still existed somewhere in this nightmare. Emma, Jake, she yelled, channeling every ounce of her love, every note of her desperation. Run back to the house. Now. Mom, I don't now. The children hesitated, then suddenly moved, their feet kicked into action by instinct, just as the shadows jerked backward, as if caught off guard by her fierceness. Rachel felt the pressure dissipate slightly, allowing her to surge forward. But Mr. Thompson laughed, the sound grating against her skin. You may get them to run, but they cannot escape that which has already taken root. The warmth of the light shimmered tantalizingly close, but just as she reached for it, more shapes began to emerge from the trees, vague yet looming, their whispers growing louder, clawing at her resolve. Take them, join us. The shadows chanted, voices blending into a chilling chorus. As she tore her gaze away from the advance of more phantoms, panic set in a new way. Fear of the unknown awaited her within the brightness. I want to leave you. But the shadows seemed to promise otherwise. For the first time, Rachel felt true helplessness claw at her chest. The light became distorted, flickering as figures danced around her, shadows twisting the very essence of her perception. What kind of horror awaited her if she turned away? What awaited at the threshold of illumination? And just like that, Rachel's heart clenched in dread. She was about to discover just how deep the night's hunger went. Where would she go if her children fell into darkness? The shadows crept closer, their whispers intertwining with the rustle of leaves like a sinister lullaby. Rachel's heart pulsed erratically in her chest, each beat a desperate plea to escape. She could barely hold onto the fleeting light, the warmth of her home fading as fear wrapped around her like a suffocating shroud. Emma, Jake, she screamed, her voice breaking, but the children were still frozen, caught in a web of fear and confusion. The darkness churned with a life of its own, coiling around her limbs. The shadowy amalgamation of terror was reaching, searching for weakness. Mommy, Emma finally cried, but the curvature of her voice fell flat against the heavy weight of the unseen. It was a plea that sent a fresh wave of terror through Rachel, a reminder of the vulnerability she couldn't protect. Keep going, Rachel yelled, desperate to break the paralysis gripping them. But still, they hesitated, fear holding them in place. As guilt clawed at her insides, Rachel turned her gaze back to Mr. Thompson. His smug smile twisted her stomach. You see their desires. They are an easy lure. Children seek what they do not understand, he said, his voice a haunting melody dripping with mockery. What do you want? Rachel shouted, her voice barely above a whisper, drenched in the panic that clutched at her throat. Only to fulfill their curiosity, he replied, gesturing toward the shadows, which seemed to swell with anticipation. They whispered her name, their calls mingling with those of her children. They want to know the depth of darkness, and oh, how sweet it is. Each terrible word unsettled her, awakening primal instincts in Rachel. She envisioned letting go, of surrendering to this surreal nightmare, but the very idea of losing her children kept her tethered. You want to trade? Rachel asked, her mind racing. What will you take? Only what they willingly give, he replied, stepping closer. The shadows elongated behind him, drawing nearer like a curtain, enhancing Rachel's horror. Dread twisted her insides. Emma. Jake. You need to run. Tears streamed down her cheeks, mingling with her hope that flickered like an old light bulb. Don't listen to him. He wants to take you. They stared at her, eyes wide with uncertainty and confusion, innocent yet at the brink of temptation. Rachel's heart sank deeper as she realized that curiosity was a dangerous game, and they were playing it like professionals. Come to me. The shadows crooned, beckoning with the tempting pull of the unknown. Rachel's breath quickened. She couldn't let them fall under this sinister spell, but as each moment passed, the shadows pressed against her, urging her toward the brink of despair. The wooden boards of the porch creaked beneath her feet, the air thickening with tension. She lunged forward, hands outstretched, eyes locked on her children. Don't listen. I love you. Come to me. It wasn't just about fear anymore. It was choice, survival. And then, the shadows recoiled slightly, their tendrils pulling back from the light. Rachel saw the glint of hope escape just ahead, and she surged towards it, a last desperate push. Suddenly, the ground trembled, wild with anger as Mr. Thompson's laughter echoed around her. They are already in the grasp of darkness, Rachel. You cannot win. But in that moment, as the children began to retreat towards her, she felt a shift. The shadows hesitated, a tension crackling in the air. Just as she thought they were breaking free, a piercing shriek split the night, rippling through the spectral forms. They stilled, as one shadow larger, darker, more terrible than the rest crawled forward from the depths of night. What is that? Emma whimpered, stumbling back. Rachel's arms shot out, instinctively pulling them closer against the oncoming tide. Get inside. Rachel screamed, the thunderous growl cascading over them. But with each second wasted in indecision, she felt the panic seeping through the ground beneath her. The shadows writhed, desperate to reclaim their lost hold. The agonizing pull of temptation beckoned, the pained whispers swirling in. A discordant tune that chilled to the bone. Run to me, Rachel shouted, her voice barely holding the tremor of fear. Don't look back. Terror swelled as Jake turned fleetingly at the dark spectacle before them. In that heartbeat, Rachel realized the ultimate truth of that night. They were running against more than mere whispers. They were facing something with the power to consume everything. But could she muster enough strength to shield her children from this born of the night? Just as the shadows lunged, darkness unfurling like a sinister wave, Rachel held tight. But in the depths of her heart, doubt gnawed. Could love truly contend against the darkest of desires? The last thing she saw was the abyss closing in empty, welcoming, lethal, and then there was nothing but a blinding flash as light engulfed her. But with it came the deep, ominous silence. What lay on the other side of the light? Would it bring salvation or something worse? The light swallowed them whole, a flash sharp enough to sear her eyes. But just as quickly, it pulled back. Rachel blinked against the overwhelming brightness, the world around her shifting, finally revealing its true form. She staggered, the ground trembling beneath her feet, and moaned at the distorted reality stretching out before her. They stood on the porch, just as before, but the air crackled differently now, laden with an unnatural weight. The darkness had retreated briefly, but she could feel its cold breath brushing past her, lurking just beyond reach. She turned to Emma and Jake, who trembled beside her, panic etched on their small faces. Are we safe? Emma whispered, clutching her brother's hand tightly. No, Rachel screamed, the word bursting from her, a raw snarl of desperation. We need to go inside. We have to move. But before she could grab their arms, the shadows erupted around her once more. Not just whispers now, but guttural growls surged from every corner. Hideous pinpricks of eyes glowed within the dark. The figure of Mr. Thompson materialized from the inky depths, his smug smile twisted into something grotesque. Welcome back, he laughed, the sound echoing, seeping into her bones. You thought you could escape? Silly mother, this game has only just begun. Shut up, Rachel screamed, fury igniting her blood. She felt the primal urge to protect her children overwhelming everything else, a shield against the dark terror encroaching on their fragile bond. As she shoved them towards the door, she noticed the wooden floor beneath her splintered, broken, alive with the pulse of something foul. She looked back to see shadows writhing, almost sentient in their desperation to attach themselves to her family. "Just step inside," she urged. But Emma and Jake hesitated once again, fear freezing them in place. Rachel felt the shadows' pull intensifying, wrapping its dark tendrils around their ankles, clawing for a way in. Panic twisted her heart as she held up her arms, desperate to shield them from the encroaching madness. "Please," Rachel cried, tears streaming down her face. "Don't let it get you. Fight." The shadows leaned in close, their whispers transforming into haunting lullabies, each note a seduction woven with tension. "Come to us, come." You can't escape. The sound twisted Rachel's stomach, the temptation gnawing fiercely at her resolve. She shook her head violently, trying to drown out the cacophony. "I want to let you take them." She felt her voice straining, a futile battle against the encroaching night. In that moment of defiance, Rachel pushed forward, forcing her children back and into the cracked threshold of the door. But then she felt it. The darkness struck, a horrid grasp ensnaring her wrist tightly, pulling her away from the light. With a primal roar echoing through her, she yanked her hand free, but the shadows tightened, cold fingers raking against her skin. She turned, heart racing in her chest like a frightened bird, determined to uncover whatever it was lurking in the depths. It was more than just darkness. And then she saw it, a sliver of memories surfacing in the curling darkness, faces flickering to life, twisted in agony. Those who came before, the lured and devoured, now bound to this waking nightmare. Their voices wailed in a chorus of despair as they reached through the shadows, clawing for her. "Help us, don't become one of us," Jake screamed, and the shriek echoed, a knife cutting through the bubbling terror. Rachel snapped around, forcing herself to meet her children's wide, terrified stares. There was a decision to be made, a singular choice amidst the onslaught of horror. "Emma, Jake," Rachel shouted, rallying every ounce of strength into her voice. "We can't let them take us. We're going to fight together." But just as resolve tightened her grip on hope, a new shadow broke the wall of darkness, a figure, a silhouette contrasting against the gray of fear. Rachel felt a chill race up her spine as it emerged, grotesque and familiar. Could anyone truly lend them aid, or was it just another puppet of the night? "Come now, Rachel, it's far too late." As thunder clapped overhead, the ground beneath them rumbled ominously, flooding the air with an electric tension. The darkness hummed, and with it, the knowledge that they were on the verge of something monumental, something terrible. Each heartbeat pounded louder, and Rachel felt the shifting power within chaos. This was not just a battle against the night, but the folding of their very reality. Would she plunge into the abyss to claim her children? Just then, a blinding flash surged. Was it light, or was it a rift to something worse? In that moment of uncertainty, the darkness rippled, and shadows began to flicker, waiting for the slip of her choice. Would they dive into the unknown, or bear the horrific weight of what it meant to confront the everlasting night looming before them? The blinding flash faded, leaving Rachel suspended in a moment of silence. The shadows screeched in furious displeasure, their collective wail a cacophony clawing at her sanity. She could feel the air thicken around them, a palpable dread that seeped into her bones, curling around her heart like a vice. "Stay close," she shouted, her breath hitching, panic rising with every second they lingered on the porch. The darkness writhed, twisting like smoke, coiling around her and her children, its grip tightening, testing their resolve. Emma clung to Jake, their fingers intertwined, a fragile lifeline amidst the chaos. "Mom, I'm scared." Emma's voice trembled, leaking out little fragments of her innocence. Rachel pressed her lips together, feeling the sting of tears beat against her resolve. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just trust me." Rachel took a step back, feeling a surge of that strange energy building beneath the floorboards, a pulsing heartbeat threatening to swallow them whole. The once familiar cabin now loomed as a sinister giant, its windows darkened, eyes glaring down, waiting for their next move. As she turned, that grotesque figure loomed larger, transforming into a sickly mass of shadows and jagged edges. Mr. Thompson stood there, each twisted feature draped with malevolence. His eyes glinted like knives, slicing through the murky gloom. "Do you really think you can escape?" he mocked, laughter bubbling from his throat, vibrating with a horrifying timbre that rattled the wood around them. The shadows twisted, ebbing and flowing, almost as if they fed on his taunts, pulling tighter around her family. "Shut up. You don't control us," Rachel shouted, her fear morphing into a defiant snarl, ringing with the power of a mother's love. She could sense the pressure building, could almost feel the clash of darkness against her strength. She had to resist. They had to break free. Snap! A sudden crack echoed in the air, fracturing her focus. Rachel whipped her head towards the sound, her heart on fire, only to find the porch railing splintering, giving way to the shadows below. "Run!" she screamed, urging her children forward with all her might. Emma's face twisted in confusion, her feet sluggish, but Jake instinctively turned to bolt for the door. In that moment, Rachel felt a deep, primal fear grip her. If they could not escape from this haunted void, this thing threatening to engulf everything they held dear, she would be powerless. "No," she cried, lunging forward to grab Emma's arm and drag her toward Jake. But as she did, the shadows swarmed, a tide of darkness crashing against them. "Together!" Jake shouted, pulling his sister closer. But the shadows clawed back, their talons like icy fingers snatching at their legs, sharp teeth gnashing. Rachel's pulse thundered in her ears, drowning out the whispers of lost souls begging for salvation. This was a battle for time. Every second felt stretched and warped, like the fabric of reality was unraveling at their feet. "Keep moving," Rachel yelled, pumping adrenaline through her veins as she felt the shadows biting at her heels. She had to keep them moving. She had to fight for their lives. Just as they crossed into the dark threshold, another flash lit the scene, glimmering like the sliver of hope Rachel had been craving, casting long shadows over the room. Was it a sign of salvation? Or a deeper abyss? The very air vibrated with tension, both a trap and a lifeline, leaving Rachel gasping, unsure of what lay ahead. Dread slid down her spine as the entangled shadows morphed, coiling tighter, whispering fragmented secrets of despair, binding them further to the night. "Mom, what is it?" Emma whimpered, eyes wide with fear. Rachel's mind raced, tangled between the urgency of their escape and the swelling darkness that threatened to engulf them in its embrace. She had to act, to make the hard choices that weighed heavier than the silence echoing in the air. And then, from the swirling mass, something shifted, a flicker of recognition, a glint of understanding glimmering just beyond the chaos, slipping into view. As fear grasped her heart, one question rang clear through her foggy mind. What would she uncover if she dared to take that step? If they fell deeper into the night or found their way back into the light, could it break the cycle of terror, resurrecting its grip? But time was running out, the shadows closing in with maddening hunger. Rachel felt herself at a precipice. A decision loomed, and every heartbeat drew her closer to the edge. Would she choose light or darkness, salvation or sacrifice? The darkness rolled like a living thing, eager to swallow their screams and despair. Rachel felt the weight of it pressing against her, like fingers made of smoke tightening around her throat. The hallway stretched ahead into blackness, a void swirling with shadows that couldn't decide if they would scream or whisper. "Mom," Emma's voice broke, shattered pieces of fear echoing in the crushing silence. "Keep moving." Rachel's words were raw, pulled from the depths of her being, barely escaping as her heart raced, thunderous and wild. She pulled both children closer, into the protective embrace of their small circle of light. Mr. Thompson's figure melted in and out of the darkness, eyes flashing like shards of glass. "You think just running makes you free? It won't save you." His laughter was a song of madness, mingling with the clamoring shadows, taunting them. Rachel yanked her children toward the kitchen. "We need to find a way out. Stay together." She bolted into the room, the scent of damp wood and stale air invading her senses. The kitchen, once a refuge filled with warmth, now bore the marks of despair etched into every corner. "Mom, look." Jake pulled Emma closer, pointing to a small window above the sink, its pane cracked but offering a glimpse of the fading twilight outside. The idea of freedom ignited hope, flickering as the darkness slithered behind her like a hungry beast. "Help me up," Rachel urged, pushing her trembling body against the counter. "No," Mr. Thompson howled, the rage in his voice slamming against the walls like a violent wind. "You can't escape. You belong to the night now. Rachel's stomach churned as she lifted Jake, her eldest, onto the counter with frantic urgency. Emma's small hands gripped Rachel's arm, holding fast like a lifebuoy in a storm-tossed sea. They had to escape. They had to try. Push him out, Jake. Hurry. Rachel's voice was fierce, a battle cry against the onslaught of shadows. As Jake leaned up, placing his hands on the sill, the walls vibrated, shuddering from the disdain of the darkness. The air grew thick, electric with an energy that felt alive. Then, with a strength fueled by fear and desperation, he managed to shove the window open. Come on, Emma. You go next. Emma hesitated, eyes darting between the open space and her mother's terrified gaze. What about you, Mom? A quick flutter of uncertainty flickered in Rachel's heart. I'll follow. Just go. But before Rachel could move, the shadows surged forward with a deafening roar, spilling into the room like ink pouring from a broken bottle. In an instant, tendrils grasped at her ankles, cold and grasping, dragging her backward with an insistent pull that made her breath catch. Mom, Jake shouted, dangling halfway out the window. I can't hold on. Rachel screamed, clawing at the floor, digging her fingers into the age-worn wood as she felt herself jolted off balance. The shadows coiled tighter, whispering promises of eternal darkness in her ears. Just as Rachel felt hope slipping, she saw the glimmer of light from the window, seemed alive, beckoning her. Mom, jump! But the cacophony of shadows grew louder, rising to a deafening roar, drowning out her thoughts. As a claw of darkness wrapped completely around her, something deep within Rachel ignited. In that final moment, she planted her feet and screamed into the void, I will not be taken. In that moment of defiance, a blinding light burst from her chest, radiating warmth and power. The shadows writhed, shrieking in pain as the light pushed them back, creating a small sanctuary around Rachel. Then, in an instant, everything went still. The shadows quailed, and the walls pulsed as if the cabin itself was alive. For just a heartbeat, Rachel felt they might win, that the light could pull them away from the brink. Then the darkness surged back with frantic ferocity, hungry and insatiable. Mom. Now. Rachel leapt, propelled by a force she couldn't name, crashing into Jake and Emma. The three of them tumbled from the window together, spilling onto the ground, breathless and gasping. But as they lay there in the dirt, the cabin loomed behind them, heavy and looming, filled with the sound of the wild shadows still searching, still hungry. Rachel's heart thundered in triumph and terror. They had escaped the clutches of the darkness again, but for how long? As the chilling wails echoed from inside, she felt a ripple of dread. What happens now? The ground beneath them trembled, sending a shiver up her spine. Was this just the beginning? And then, above the shadows' cries, a new voice broke through. One she recognized. Rachel, the whisper wrapped around her, cold and bone-deep. The darkness hadn't let go. What awaited them in the shadows? Would they have to face the ultimate betrayal? The moment they hit the ground, the air throbbed with a sudden chill. Rachel's heart raced as she pushed herself up, panic tightening her throat. Shadows danced still in the cabin, a swirling mass of rage and despair. It was like the place was a living nightmare. Mom, we have to go? Jake's voice trembled. He pulled on her sleeve, his wide eyes darting back toward the window where the darkness seemed to pulse and breathe. She nodded, her mind racing. This way. She grasped Emma's hand, dragging both of them across the yard. The fading twilight cast long shadows behind them, stretching ominously. Each step felt like a defiance against the suffocating grip of the night. The whispering voice echoed, lingering like a bad memory. Rachel slithered around her. She couldn't ignore it, couldn't shake it off. It sounded like an old friend but drew dread deep inside her gut. Mom, run. Jake urged again, his small body vibrating with urgency. They moved toward the tree-line that bordered the yard, but Rachel hesitated for a breath. What if they turned and there it was again, the familiar face now distorted with madness? A piercing scream tore through the air from the cabin. It was a sound like splintering wood and grief, raw and agonizing. The shadows inside writhed as if celebrating their terror. They were trapped between that horror and the foreboding forest before them. The moment hung, heavy with choice. Don't look back, Rachel whispered. Then, almost against her will, She glanced over her shoulder. The cabin loomed ominously, darkened windows like watchful eyes. But it was the figure standing in the doorway that froze her blood. Mr. Thompson was there, face obscured but those glassy eyes glimmering. A silent scream echoed through her. "Run!" she shouted, shattering the grip of fear around her. They dashed toward the trees, their feet pounding against the dirt. Branches snagged at her clothes, tearing at her skin, but she didn't care. Each scrape fueled her desperation. "Mom!" Emma cried, her voice cracking. "Can he get us out here?" "Not if we keep moving." Rachel forced the words through gritted teeth, though dread clawed at her insides. The forest swallowed them whole, the suffocating darkness only deepening. Each step was a struggle, the underbrush threatening to trip them up, but they pushed through, limbs trembling from fatigue, hearts thrumming with fear. Then came the sound of rustling behind them. It was sharper than before, deliberate. The shadows were pursuing. Rachel felt Jake stumble, gasping for breath. "I can't keep going. Just a little further," Rachel urged, her voice a shaky whisper fueled by the adrenaline of terror. They darted deeper into the darkness of the trees, where the light barely reached. She dared another glance back, but the darkness swallowed everything. Panic surged. It felt like it was everywhere, ready to pounce. Then came that chilling whisper again from the depths of the trees, flicking at her ears like fingers. "Rachel, shut up," she screamed, pushing her children to keep moving. "We can't stop. We have to find help." Yet the weight of what they had escaped, what wanted to keep them, loomed heavy. It was all inside her mind, a trembling reminder of thrill and fear, the need for survival overwhelming. Then, without warning, a figure stepped out of the shadows. A stranger, pale and ragged, eyes wide with something that looked like desperation. Rachel almost stumbled backward, instinctively pulling her children close. "Help us," he rasped, voice shaking. "You don't know what is coming." "They're coming." A rush of confusion fought for space in her mind. Who was this man? What did he know? And behind them, the sound of rustling grew closer, hurried footsteps breaking through the quiet of the night. Would they ever escape the darkness, or were they stepping deeper into its trap? "What is coming?" Rachel whispered, her eyes darting to the shadows closing in from behind. She felt the shivers of dread clawing down her spine. What awaited them in that terrifying unknown? Would they stand a chance against the shadows that wouldn't let go? Rachel spun around, clutching Emma and Jake closer as the shadows thrashed against the trees, their whispers clawing at her mind. The stranger's eyes glinted, a frantic hope mixed with terror. "You have to run. They're always watching, always waiting." The forest sang with an otherworldly hum, the moonlight barely penetrating the thick, leafy canopy. Rachel could hear the rustle of leaves being pushed aside, as if something or someone was lurking just beyond her view. "Mom, I'm scared," Jake whispered, his voice tinged with panic. I know," Rachel soothed, her heart pounding furiously in rhythm with the urgency. "We'll get through this together." Suddenly, a shadow darted through the trees, quick and deliberate. The air thickened with a sense of foreboding that settled like a weight across Rachel's chest. She steeled herself, trying to breathe through the fear. "Look," the stranger shouted, pointing further into the forest. "The cabin. That's where they're drawn." Rachel's stomach twisted. The cabin? Was it really safe at all, or was it just another trap? But there was no time to ponder. The shadows thrummed closer, like a dark tide ready to sweep them away. Without thinking, she nodded. "We have to go back." "No, we can't," Emma wailed, clinging tightly to Jake. But the thought of facing the shadows without a plan sparked a fire within Rachel. "Stay close," she commanded, her voice sharp and fierce. They sprinted back toward the cabin, heartbeats booming, mud splattering against their shoes as they approached the cabin's threshold. Horror clawed at her senses. Shadows crawled along the ground and twisted against the walls. Rachel felt icy fingers brushing her back, the air growing thick with an insatiable hunger. But in that darkness, she sensed something else lingering, a sliver of hope, or perhaps the last flickers of light. "Mom," Jake yelled, his voice tinged with guilt as they dashed inside. "Are we safe here?" Mr. Thompson's deep laugh reverberated inside the cabin. It echoed with a boisterous mockery, creeping right into the marrow of her bones. "You think you're safe in the heart of darkness? You brought them back, sweet Rachel, and they are far hungrier than ever. In that moment, Rachel let out a cry, a primal roar of protective instinct. "You will not take my children." As she shouted, the light within her surged back, fueled by a fierce determination. The shadows recoiled, screeching as their sinuous bodies shied from her. But she felt the tether fraying between light and darkness. "Quick, find a light source," she yelled, searching the room filled with a frantic desperation. "Anything." Emma's eyes scanned the dark corners, and soon darted toward a table laden with flickering candles. "Here," she called, gripping one tight in her small hands. "Light it. Now," Rachel instructed, urgency flooding her voice. The shadows began to close in, pressing tighter, seeking the warmth that pulsed around them. Jake grabbed the matches from the table, his hands shaking as he struck one against the wood. The flame burst to life. As it flickered in the gloom, Rachel felt her heart leap. "Hold it up, Emma. Don't let it go out." With that, the light illuminated the room, casting strange shapes and shadows dancing on the walls. The shadows shrieked, retreating as the glow fought back their encroachment. Rachel's heart thumped harder in her chest, her spirits lifting slightly as the power of their unity filled the air. "Tell the truth," Rachel spoke in a fierce whisper to the shadows, channeling every ounce of her maternal resolve. "Tell me what you want." The room shuddered, the shadows swirling, forming into a singular shape. Mr. Thompson, his face contorted with rage and hunger. "You foolish woman. You cannot escape what is destined. That darkness has whispered your name, and it shall feed." "No," Rachel declared firmly, narrowing her eyes. "You're wrong. This is not my destiny. My children will not be part of your game." Jake squeezed Emma's hand tighter as they stepped forward together, fueled by the flickering light, the shadows trembling before their unified strength. With momentum building, Rachel fueled her fury, using it to push back. "You're nothing but fear, and fear can't hold us if we face it together." "Now," Rachel shouted, leaning on the flame of hope. In one surge, she thrust the candle toward the shadows. The fire flared, pulsating with life, pushing the darkness back, forcing it to retreat even further. But as they drew closer to victory, suddenly the shadows screamed, haunting voices swirling around them, begging for release. Memories poured from the darkness, faces twisted in sorrow. "Help us," they cried out, not in malice but desperation. Rachel's heart twisted. "What do you want?" she demanded, realizing that the shadows were still carrying the weight of those lost. Of innocence turned to wrath, the flicker of recognition flashed through Mr. Thompson's eyes. "You think it is that simple? The stains run deep. The shadows do not forgive. They consume." The realization crashed over Rachel like waves. These shadows were tied to something far more sinister than mere maliciousness. There was pain, loss, and the echoes of betrayal. "We can't break this cycle alone," she whispered, sorrow knotting her gut. But then, with newfound resolve, she gathered her children tightly, love binding them against the darkness. "We will break it together. This ends now." As the shadows twisted again, swirling in a cacophony of rage and sorrow, she raised the candle high. Together. In that moment, everything changed. The combined warmth of their love ignited the flame, growing fiercely until it enveloped them all. Light poured out, all-encompassing, radiant, a bursting firestorm of emotion and connection. With a deafening roar, the shadows shrieked, ripping away from the light, battling against it in a futile attempt to reclaim their hold. The entire cabin shuddered violently as darkness began to dissolve. Rachel's heart soared. A new dawn washed over them. And just like that, the cabin crumbled, shadows losing their grasp as light swallowed them whole. In an instant, darkness was utterly replaced by a dazzling warmth, tears spilling down Rachel's cheeks as the world shifted back. As they stood disoriented in the morning light, gasping for breath, Rachel watched as the shadows settled like ashes. They were free from that wretched bond. "Is it over?" Jake whispered, eyes wide as they absorbed their surroundings, feeling the weight of dawn's golden glow bathe them in warmth. Rachel pulled both her children into a fierce embrace, their laughter echoing in the air like a long-awaited reunion. "Yes, it's over. We're safe now." But in her heart, a deep shadow flickered, a reminder of what they had faced. There would always be a part of her that remembered the depths of fear, the whispers of the night that tried to consume them. Together they had triumphed, but shadows would always exist waiting, lurking, watching. And now, their bond would be the light that guided them through any darkness ahead. With a heavy breath, she turned to the open sky, heart full as the sun rose. No matter the haunting unknown, they would move forward, together. You need to subscribe immediately to this channel so you don't miss our next exclusive story. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Now, smash that like button as hard as you can, because it truly helps us spread the word. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this wild conclusion. Let's hear it all. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this thrilling finale. Only true fans know how important it is to support the channel like this.